Hello everybody and welcome back to the Leeds Lens for a bit of a special today. And this is something, to be honest with you, I've wanted to do for the last few days. Since really the Chelsea and Liverpool games, I've wanted to talk about this because obviously Daniel Farke's job going into that Chelsea game was massively on the ropes. We know full well, had he lost against Chelsea, lost against Liverpool, he no longer would be Leeds United manager and we probably would have replaced him. So the question is though, where are we now? Where are we now? So that's going to be the conversation today. I know we've got a few people in the chat that have now gone towards Daniel Farke again and backed him, having non-backed him or gone against him. Well, that's going to be today's United's video in essence, really. Jack says, evening Scott, evening to you too, Jack. Let's with this show, by the way, let's get everyone involved. The reason we've got debate in the title is because I want your guys' comments in, get your thoughts in. Do you think Daniel Farke should be able to remain as Leeds United manager and for how long? And we've got quite a bit to get into this because I've got quite a few points. There's obviously the comparison, I think, naturally to the Jesse Marsch era. So I've done a bit of digging into what happened another Jesse Marsch time, when we sacked him, when did them two results come against Bournemouth and Liverpool that obviously saved his job? Is there a parallel between between them two results and the Liverpool and Chelsea result that Daniel Farke has just got as well? What does this all mean for the January transfer window? To be honest with you, this might end up being a really long show. We'll have to see how it goes. But I've got quite a bit to say on it all. But as I said, let's get you all involved. The reason why we do these live shows is obviously to get the audience involved as well. So yeah, let's get into it anyway. But Jack does say evening, Scott. So as I said, evening to you too, Jack. But the first question, and I think the best place to start with all this is, how much time has Farke earned? How much time has Daniel Farke, by winning and drawing, not winning against Liverpool, although it did feel like a win, how much time has he actually earned by doing that? What has he actually earned? And I think fundamentally, for me, I'm looking at it in a box of 3 games now. I'm looking at the, we've got next, the Brentford game, the Palace game, and the Sunderland game. And I'm thinking them box of 3. I think if he loses them 3, he's a goner again, back under pressure. So I think points have got to be gained in the next 3. And I think, to be honest, and this is something we've obviously mentioned on the channel a few times now, I still think, yes, we've learned something in the last few games, for sure. We've definitely seen the formation change. But how much have we actually learned in the last 2 performances? Like, I think there's a real debate regarding Daniel Farke that we actually learned more at Man City than we did against Chelsea and Liverpool. And now I know the Chelsea and Liverpool thing, the obvious thing to go with is obviously the formation change. But we saw that in the Man City game. But he obviously stuck with it in the Chelsea and obviously the start of the Liverpool game as well. So I think that's 2 things to go off. But I think the main game to go off really is the Man City game. Because the Man City game is the first game away from home that we've played well in a while. And I think when we look at sort of Daniel Farke's job and how he retains his job, for me, the main core principles of how he's going to retain his job is actually nothing to do with the home form. We've been pretty good at home, which is why I don't want to write off the Chelsea and Liverpool games. That's not what I want to do because the points are fantastic and are important for us. But I think it's really important that we don't understate the fact that actually we've been pretty good at home. And actually, if it wasn't for some sort of bad luck at times and a few unfortunate moments, we potentially could pick even more points up at home. And it actually goes as far as saying we haven't actually put a bad home performance in all season. I argue the worst performance we've had at home was probably the West Ham win in terms of actual performance level over the game. Not in terms of points, but in terms of performance level. But we've actually been pretty good at home. So how much did we actually learn in them games? And this takes me back to the Man City game. Because for me, that is the game where we learned the most. Because we learned the most in that game. Because that was the last away game we played in Daniel Farke that we actually played well. We haven't played that well in away games. The away games have been the problem. We've played 7 away games now and we've picked up 3 points away from home. And that was against Wolves. And if anyone watched the Wolves versus Man United game on Monday night, you'll know Wolves are absolutely abhorrent at this moment in time. They are so bad. I don't think they were quite as bad as when they played us as what they are now, in fairness. But they are a really poor team and they are definitely going to get relegated. So we haven't really showed against anyone that's remotely competitive in this division that we can actually be remotely competitive away from home yet. And that is the main deciding factor for me for Daniel Farke's job. Because we can't just stay up battling from 19 games. You've got to use the whole 38 games. And at this moment in time, the worst thing I can say about Daniel Farke is he's not using the 38 games. He's using 19 games. He's using the home games and that is it. And I do think, to be fair, there's been something installed in the players about home games. I remember Tanaka after the Liverpool game, and something that highlighted me, which we haven't probably mentioned as much on this channel, is that he said after the Liverpool game, every single home game we're competitive in and we're really good at home. Now, I think there's something in the players, and this probably comes from the manager potentially, because we've seen it in Daniel Farke's tenure so far at the football club, that we do just target home games, and that is where the points are going to come from. But that can't happen because this season is massively important, and I'll talk about why this season is going to be trickier than others in a minute later in the video. But later in the stream to say, but there's quite a bit to mention with this, because we are going to need to play, and we are going to need to be competitive in sort of all the games have got to be points. Or potential points for Leeds United, not just the 19 home games or whatever, the 11 home games that's left. Jack says, I was quite adamant on Farke out, but we've seen fight from the players and tactics that can earn us points in tough games in the last few. Got to pick up a couple of wins in the next few to win me over, to be honest. That's an interesting point, Jack. I think I want to break that down into a couple of points. We'll start with the fight from the players. I think this is really, really important, actually. And something that I will always say, and I've always maintained on this channel, and you guys know I've never actually been Daniel Farke out, but something that I've always adamantly gone against, which I haven't with other sort of tactical principles that we've talked about, is this fight. And I think credit to the players that they've never given up. They have never given up. We have seen Leeds United teams in the past down tools. One thing I will always say with this Leeds United team is they never stop playing for the manager and they never down tools. The easiest thing in the world when we were 2-0 down away at Man City with Daniel Farke's job on the line was to let it all grow and let it crumble and lose 5 and 6-0. We've seen it in the past before. They never did that, to be fair to them, and credit to the players. And we've recruited well in terms of a mentality standpoint with the players because they never down tools, and they didn't in that game, and that was the time to do it. And again, against Chelsea, they don't just then don't throw it in the towel against Man City, but then they perform against Chelsea and they perform against Liverpool. A massive credit to them, because if they did not want the manager in post, that wouldn't have happened. So the players spoke in the way that players can speak in the performance on the pitch, and they showed that actually there is fight from this team and there is fight for the manager. So that's something to bear in mind when we talk about this whole conversation, that the players are clearly on board. But it's going to be the tactics that I think the question mark. The next thing that I want to talk about is the sort of what we need in the next few games. Because as I said, I started this by talking about the Brentford game, by talking about the Palace game, and by talking about the Sunderland game. And for me, we need to get at least, for me, I'm looking at going, that's 4 points for me. That has to be another 4 points. That's the minimum I'd probably take in the next 3. If someone said 3 points, I'd probably say no. Because after that, we've got Liverpool, I think we've got Anfield away, which I know they're on a bad run, but I think, again, that's going to be really hard. Obviously, they won last night as well. So for me, as I said, I'm looking at this moment in time going 4 points minimum. He has to get 4 points in them games, potentially 6. I think 6 would be a fantastic return. I think 4 would be average. I think 5 would be pretty good, really. The Palace game for me is the one that I'd look at more than even the 2 away games, even though that's a better team. With obviously Crystal Palace, because of what they're doing. Like, they play, everybody knows when you play on Thursday in a European game, you always play on Sunday. But because of the fixture congestion for Crystal Palace, we play them on Thursday. They play on Thursday, and then they play again against us on Saturday evening at 8 PM at Ellen Road. Under the lights at Ellen Road, with what, 2 days rest, that has to be a game for Leeds United to target, or 1 day's rest with the Friday off for Crystal Palace. That has to be a game that Leeds United target for points in 100%. And that for me, especially with what we are at home, that has to be 3 points for me. It really does. Not normally because Crystal Palace are a good team, but because of the fixture schedule they're under. Not playing Thursday, not playing Friday, and then having to travel up to Ellen Road under the lights and play against Leeds United. That is as hard as it gets for Palace for me, in my opinion. So that's really important. Mark says, evening. The simple fact is, if the player is rated 8 out of 10 every game, we have a chance. Winning battles, 120% effort. Yes, we still give soft goals away, all individual errors. So you're quite behind the manager then, Mark. That's interesting. You've also said Farke will be here all season. What needs to happen, stay roughly where we are by Jan, bring in quality, and then we'll be okay. I've said this for a few times, Mark, and I think it's interesting that you mentioned we need to get to January. The time that we need to get to, in my opinion, when you look at fixtures, and yes, we do need to enter the transfer market and do business, 100% agree with you. But Leeds United have really, for me, don't really have a good run of fixtures from now until the start of March. We've just got like, there's the occasional good fixture in there. I think we play Fulham at home, etc. But if we can get to March, in and around it, after then, we've got a really nice run to the end of the season. Our final 10 games are really, really good games. I think the only tricky games we play in that time are Man United away and Spurs away. And I don't think they're horrific fixtures. I think they're games you can pick up points in. We've obviously got West Ham on the final game as well, which will be a tricky one. But for me, I'm looking at going, if we can be within touching distance in March, and what I mean by that is within 3 points of the relegation zone in March, people might not like this, but with the running we go and with the games that the other teams have, if we can be within 3, 2, 1 point, or even outside the relegation zone at the end of March, we've got a fantastic opportunity to stay in this division. Because our final games, like in that final run, we've got Wolves to play at home, we've got Burnley to play at home, I think we've got Brentford to play at home, all in our last 10, and I think there's another one as well, maybe Forest in our last 10 as well, to play at home. So there's really good opportunity for Leeds United to pick up points. So we've got to be in the round of it, close March for sure. Mark also says, if we lose DCL, we will struggle. Can't rely on Okafor, Nonto, James. No, we can't. Can we rely on Okafor, James? No, we can't. Yeah, I think it depends on what formation we play. Like, I think all them players at times are doing a job. Like, Okafor when we play a 4-3-3 is one of our most important players because I think he's one of the only wings we've got that actually can create something out of nothing. And I think you saw that in games this season. We've not had him playing a 4-3-3. Mark also says, too many hell-bent on Farke. It's the players that get the points. This is where I disagree with you. The manager's massively important. If there's anything that's actually taught us about this, Mark, I only have to take you back to a few games ago when he changed system at halftime against Man City and we saw a massive upturn in performance level. If it was all about the players, then the best clubs wouldn't have a point, like the best managers would be irrelevant. That isn't the case. It's obviously players have a huge bearing, but the manager also has a huge bearing in terms of tactical standpoint, in terms of setting up in the best way to get possibilities. Aaron says, bring Pablo in as coach. I disagree with that one, mate. I've got to be honest. I know he's doing quite well, actually, but I disagree. Neil says, I don't think any Premier League managers' jobs are safe. It's a results business. Therein goes with the job. Yeah, well, it does go with the job in terms of, yeah, it's a result-based business. I agree with that. And no manager's positions are safe. I think even if you look at sort of Arne Slot as an example, like, he's obviously in a bit of water at this moment in time, deep water at this moment in time. And he won the league last year, so I completely agree with you. The players are playing for Farke, so what's the point in bringing another manager in? That's me. And what's the point in bringing another manager in? That's just me just saying. Yeah, no, I get your point. And as I said, the players playing for the manager is a massive importance. Neil, I 100% agree with you. But again, you're disregarding the tactical side of the game. And the tactical side of the game, more than ever in the new form of the Premier League, is so drastically important. Every coach in this division is so good tactically now. They're unbelievable on a tactical basis, and I think we also need a tactician at the heart of everything we do in terms of a managerial standpoint as well. So yes, obviously it's a real positive that they're playing for him, and the players have huge responsibility, like of course Mark said. But the tactical responsibility of the manager is hugely important as well. Hugely important, as I said. And if anything can show you that, look at the difference in performances when we play a different style, when we've gone long, when we've played a 3-5-2. There's been a massive increase in performance levels. And that is because fundamentally, tactically, it's massively important. Anyway, let's have a look. One thing I want to talk about a bit is the sort of parallels with Jesse Marsch and the timelines of all that. One thing that I want to talk about, by the way, and then I'll get back into the comments. So I'll just do my Jesse Marsch piece and then we'll go back into the comments because I've just seen a few more popping through. So I wanted to talk about the parallels with Jesse Marsch. And I think that's something that people are all gonna bear in mind. And obviously the similar position is that Jesse Marsch's job was massively in a situation of crisis. Then he beats Bournemouth, then he beats Liverpool, shall I say, then he beats Bournemouth 4-3 from 3-1 down, and he basically saves his job, and we don't win another game until he's sacked on, I believe, the 5th of February. Going through all the January transfer window, then we get through January transfer window, he brings in McKennie, etc., and we sack him. And then obviously Leeds panicked, got Garcia, and it basically went wrong from there. So what is the situation with Jesse Marsch then? Well, the Jesse Marsch thing, which I thought was interesting, because I was trying to look at the timeline of when this was, and it was actually a month earlier than it's really happened with Daniel Farke. Like, the first game, that game against Liverpool, if people don't remember, was actually back in November, should I say? No, it was in October, and then obviously the Bournemouth game was at the start of November, so it's actually a month earlier than what's happened with Daniel Farke. But the situation actually is, when I looked back at it, after he won the 2 games, which was our 12th and 13th game. He was in a massive crisis going into after the 11th game, won the 12th game, won the 13th game. Similar to Daniel Farke, he was in a massive crisis obviously after the 13th game, wins the 14th game, wins the 15th game, keeps his job. So similar timeline. The difference actually is though, is that, so after that game, Jesse Marsch actually had 15 points in his first 13 games, whereas Daniel Farke, with these 2 results, has obviously got to 15 points from 15 games. So we're below. We actually are behind what Jesse Marsch was doing at this moment in time. But the difference is what's going to happen afterwards, and I think that's the question, because after that, Jesse Marsch, I believe, drew maybe 2 in the next 3, and then basically lost at the end of the season. And actually, when he got sacked, Leeds United were on 18 points after 20 games. And that's obviously when they sacked Jesse Marsch. So what do we need to learn from that? Well, we need to learn that obviously 2 results don't decide what happens. Cannot decide what happens with the manager, because that was the mistake we made, obviously, with Jesse Marsch. And I think I said this at the time when obviously all the reports came out about he basically got Chelsea and Liverpool almost to save his job. I talked on this channel then about that can't be the judge. That what happened in them 2 games was brilliant, but it could never be the judge of what of Daniel Farke as a coach, and if we should continue with his job. We're picking Farke not from what he's done in the past at this moment in time. The reason you keep a manager in his job is not for what he's done in the past, it's for what you expect him to do in the future. And also, we're talking here about what over 20 games of football. Can you decide if a manager should keep a job for 20 games of football based on 2 games of football? No. So for me, if you were going to sack Daniel Farke after the Chelsea and Liverpool game, if he didn't get good enough results, you had to sack him. And that's where this whole conversation sort of goes for me. But the contradiction to this is that the reason you'd have done that is because you don't see it working later on, and you haven't seen anything to show that it's going to work later on. Yes, he's got results, but you don't see the longevity in it. I think the thing that's keeping Daniel Farke in the job is not just the results we got in the last 2 games, but it's the difference in approach. And I think this is when we talk about the future and what Daniel Farke can bring this Leeds United team for the future. It is about this approach and this new style. Because I think if we'd have won the 2 games, I think probably would have kept his job anyway. But if we'd have won these 2 games in a 4-3-3, playing the way we have all season, I think it'd have been good. But I think there'd be much more pressure on him. But it's his adaptation. And his adaptation has shown that if he can continue to do that for the rest of the season, we should see a better situation for Daniel Farke, in my opinion, for the future. And a better situation for Leeds United, which is obviously what the board are going to judge on. And that is the thing, I think, fundamentally keeping him his job at the moment in time. It's that adaptation that he showed at Man City, then he used it against Chelsea, and then the adaptation that he showed in Liverpool to go from the 5-back or the 3-back, however you want to look at it, into obviously the 4-3-3, which then got Leeds United back into the game as well. So these are the main things, because I think when, as I said, the board for me will have spoken to the managers. Definitely, we heard that at the time. But one thing that they've been looking for was not just results, but results with adaptations that you can use and go, right, he's adapting that game, he's now learned to adapt. So in the later games, when new games come up now, you can go, right, I can do that again, and he's sure he can do that now, and he can now continue to adapt for the rest of the season and get Leeds United points. And I think that is a fundamental as to why he's probably going to stay in his job, in my opinion, for the time being. Aaron says, why wouldn't you want Pablo in to help out? Oh, you said I thought you meant in as coach, being in as manager, but okay. Yeah, look, Pablo would be nice to bring into the football club, mate, 100%. And I think if you were going to bring him as like an assistant or something like that, which I think is obviously what you mean, yeah, I could get on board with that for sure. And the only thing I'd say with that, Aaron, is I'm not if we offered him, say, I don't know, the attacking coach. One, does Daniel Farke want him at the football club? Because obviously you want your coaching staff to be wanted by the actual manager. And number 2, don't we already have someone in that spot? So I think that's something to bear in mind. But I know what you mean in terms of Pablo would be an interesting person to bring in. The other thing with Pablo's situation as well, of course, is that would Pablo want to take it? He's got a job at this moment in time, which is a manager's job. Does he want to downgrade himself to a bigger league to go in as maybe an assistant or an attacking coach? I don't know. That would be up to him. But it could be, yeah, that could be interesting. Jack says, didn't expect Daniel Farke to switch up. He's always been stubborn. Players clearly playing for him as well. I want it to work out for him, but it's results business. Have to pick up a win in the next few. Yeah, this is where I agree with it. I think that's a perfect summary, really, and that's probably where I'm at with it. I think it's nice to see that Daniel Farke has changed his system. I think it's nice to see that we've been picking up results now, but it's a results business, and if he doesn't get results, fundamentally, he will lose his job. I do think as well, and I think this is something that I've thought for a while, sacking a manager is not good, people. It's not good. The nucleus of this team is built around Daniel Farke. we've played in Daniel Farke system for a long time, and I don't think it's as simple always as just removing the manager. There's relationships built up there between the manager and the players. The players maybe not happy with that as well if you do it, and maybe you shouldn't have to listen to the players all the time. But what I do look at is sort of I've never felt it's as simple as just sacking a manager, and I always find sacking a manager for me is last resort. Like, you want to try other things before you just sack a manager. I don't want to be a club like Watford who just have a new manager every single week. I don't want to be that club. So for me, I've always been like this. I like to wait and wait and wait. Maybe to my detriment at times, but I like to wait and wait and wait until I feel it's fundamentally not going to work before I move on. And I know some of you guys are there already with Daniel Farke and have been for a long time. But I am not one that likes to sack managers quickly. I never have been. So that's where I get it from too. PSF, it's interesting to hear from you, PSF, because we've had a lot of Daniel Farke positive, and I know you're quite obviously you've been against the manager for since I remember, really. And you've said all the last 3 games have proven is Farke should have done more, done much better this season. Fair enough. So you agree? Okay, that's not what I didn't expect from you, PSF. And look, I think you'll be proven right or be proven wrong by that, because I still maintain that I still think that Daniel Farke will be sacked at some point this season. So you will get your moment if that's going to be right or not. I've always felt fundamentally, and you guys know this on this channel, I think Daniel Farke is probably maybe bottom 3 or 4 managers in the division, in my opinion. I don't think he's one of the better coaches. But one thing I will say is I've always felt that the team's bottom 3 or 4 as well in the division. I don't think this team's really, really good. I think the team is good at times when you play a certain style and can work. But I really do think that the team is... potentially, I think we've gone too far in terms of overrating the team in the last few weeks. I don't think the team's as potentially as good as the performances we've seen in the last few weeks. Like, I think we'll struggle to emulate that Chelsea performance week in, week out, whoever is the manager. Not in terms of same result, like we're not going to win 3-1 every single game for the rest of the season, but even performance levels, I think we're going to struggle to do that, because that requires everyone, to me, like if you look at the performance levels that night of our players on the team, I think everyone was probably an 8 or a 9 out of 10. In the team. You're going to struggle for every single week someone to be 8 and 9s out of 10. It just won't happen. Players will play worse than that at times. Aaron says, if you could get one striker in Jan, who would it be and why? Oh, tricky. I in terms of an actual name, mate, I'm still sort of tossing and turning over that as such. What I would say is I would move Perot on, and I've said this a few times as well. I would move Perot on, and I would bring in someone of the same capabilities and someone with the same attributes as DCL and Nemecha. That's what if that's something that I want in January in terms of striker, I want the profiles of that. There's a few players in the Championship who've got that profile who are scoring goals at this moment in time. People might not like this, but there is a few players in the Championship who are sort of tall, strong, physical strikers. Yes, they're not like elite names and fantastic, but we're not going to have 30, 40 million to spend on a striker. So there is some names in the Championship you could look at, some of the top scorers that are not that you could look at potentially, who are going to be maybe £5 to £10 million, which could be interesting options. But fundamentally, as I said, the attributes I'm looking for is someone who can hold the ball up, someone who can bring people into play, and someone who's a strong physical striker. That is what I want. And I think Perot doesn't have them attributes, so I would move him on, personally. Anyway, the other thing that I wanted to talk a bit about was how the Daniel Farke situation sort of the implications of the January transfer window on Daniel Farke. And I think when we look at it now, I would be surprised if the 49ers were to make a change before the January transfer window now. And the reason for this, in my personal opinion, is that we are now on the 10th of December. That's where we're at, obviously, at this moment in time. We know, I think a lot of us know, regardless if you want it or not, in terms of what the 49ers will do, after these 2 results, I don't think, even if we lost at Brentford, they would sack Daniel Farke. And obviously Brentford it's Wednesday the 10th, Thursday the 11th, Friday the 12th, Saturday the 13th, so the 14th on Sunday. So it means the 15th on Monday. I think when you get into the 15th of December, it's going to be tricky now for the 49ers to bring in a new manager before the January transfer window, because obviously, when you're doing January transfer business, the manager has to look at the group of playing squad and decide what he wants in the window, obviously, and the names he wants to improve the starting 11. And I think it's going to be tricky on a timeline basis, even if he sacked him after Brentford, for a new manager to come in and make that decision going into the January window with essentially half a month to make it, and it's not just a half a month. We've got Christmas time in there. It's a massive festive period, and there's also tons and tons of Premier League football, loads of games, not a lot of time to do a lot of January transfer prep. So for me, as soon as we didn't sack him after the Liverpool game, which obviously we weren't going to because of the results, for me, this now means that we are going to go into January with Daniel Farke as the manager. I think that's what we are. I think that's what we've walked into now. And I think the opportunity was, he had that, obviously, the aim of he needed to get a certain amount of points in them 5 games. We knew he had to get points out of Chelsea and Liverpool. I think that's done now. He's got them points, and he's bought himself, I think, with the January window going into it. And I think that is something that we've got to accept a bit now, because maybe not like it. You don't have to accept it. You can do how you want. But I think that's what fundamentally will happen now, just because I think you look at it and you go, there isn't a turnaround now before the end of the transfer window or before the start of the transfer window to bring a new guy in. So I think they'll get the transfer. I think Daniel Farke has now bought himself the January transfer window, in my opinion. And that is important, because you need a stable ownership going into the window, and you need to back your man in that sense. So, and obviously, if we swap managers from now until the end of the transfer window, we'll end up rushing deals, or we'll get players that the manager doesn't want, and it could end up being a bit of a mess. So I think this will now determine that we go into the January transfer window with Daniel Farke. Let's get into some of you guys' comments anyway. PSF says, how can a team be that bad when they are capable of competing with Man City, Chelsea and Liverpool? It can be that bad, mate, because really poor teams have beaten really good teams in the past tons of times. This can happen. And the other thing to mention, PSF, which I think is something that we've not debated in general, really, probably you're saying this as well, which has sort of sparked my point on this, is that I think we've got a structure to set up against Man City, Chelsea and Liverpool. My main situation, though, mate, will be, can we find a structure that beats the likes of Wolves at home, beats the likes of Burnley at home, beats Fulham at home, beats Brentford at home, beats Forest at home? Because fundamentally, yes, we need these big scalps now because we've dropped points in previous games, but we're also going to have to win them games. And I think the 5-3-2 or the 3-5-2 works really well against the top teams, and I think we've seen that. My question would be, mate, do we want to play Brentford at home in a 5-3-2? And if we're not going to play Brentford in a 5-3-2 at home because we deem it too defensive and we don't want to have 30% possession at home against Brentford, we need to come up with a new system, which would probably be a 4-3-3 system, to beat them teams. And that is the question mark with the players, because it's a very different style of playing. Very different style of playing. And that's where the question mark for me will come in with the team, the level of the team. And also, for your point as well, when he said, how can we beat a team that bad when they're capable of competing with Man City, Chelsea and Liverpool? I could also throw that on the back to you and say, well, Daniel Farke, you think Daniel Farke's not good enough, mate, but he competed with their managers. So how can Daniel Farke compete against Pep Guardiola, Enzo Maresca and Arne Slot and then not be good enough for the Leeds United job? So I think that's something you can throw back at you as well. So I get what you're saying, but I do think there is counter arguments to that quite strongly. And as I said, the main one is not the Daniel Farke comment, but it's more about, I think we can show a structure that's competitive in them games. The difference will be, can we beat the teams in and around us at home when we play them? Because that will be the thing that keeps us up fundamentally. Like if we can beat Fulham at home, Forest at home, Burnley at home, Wolves at home, Brentford at home. If we win them 5 games, we'll probably stay in the Premier League because we'll pick up enough points in the rest of them somehow. We'll get draws in there. We'll win the odd other home game against, get a big scalp. So if we can win them 5 games, we'll stay in the division. But the question's going to be, can we win them games? And can that structure work at home to them teams? That's where I question it. And that's obviously a different challenge. BMG says, I very much doubt that will move Perot on. Part of the reason is that there's still a risk of us going down and he'll be good in the Champo. Same argument for Gruev, really. See, I've seen this argument a lot, BMG, and I think this is an interesting point, and I actually completely disagree with this. Because I believe the striker we bring in will be good enough to play in the Championship anyway. Because fundamentally, we're bringing a striker in the Premier League. I'm expecting that if we're thinking they're good enough to play in the Premier League, mate, I would expect that we think they're good enough to play in the Championship. So for me, I wouldn't just keep Perot just because he's done well in the Championship before, because Yes, he's done well in the Championship before, but he's still never going to work in the Premier League ever, even if we got relegated and then got re-promoted again. So I don't think keeping him for the Championship is a good idea because, as I said, fundamentally, even if we got relegated to the Championship tomorrow, we've still got Dominic Calvert-Lewin, we've still got Nemecha, who for me would have put up better numbers in the Championship than Perot with the same amount of minutes. The only question mark with them players, of course, is can they stay fit like we know Perot can. But if they were fit, I think they'd have got more goals in the Leeds United team last year. Because I've got to be honest, Perot got 19 goals in the Championship, and that was good, and that was a good season. But it wasn't like, with the amount of chances Leeds United created, and we know the XG that Leeds United created in the Championship, and we know Perot's a good finisher, by the way, but his movement's, in my opinion, always been poor. I think a Dominic Calvert-Lewin, if he stayed fit, or a Lucas Nemecha would score more goals than that in the Championship, in my opinion. So I disagree with that. Anyway, and I also think the new striker he'd bring in, you would hope for me, gets more than 19 goals in the Championship. Otherwise, why are we signing him for the Prem? Roger says, Farke's always going to be on a knife edge job-wise. Yeah, I think that's right, mate. PSF says, the 49ers must make the change before the transfer window. If not, they may as well keep him because it will show they quite rightly feel the players are good enough. I'll read that again. The 49ers must make the change before the transfer window. Okay. If not, they may as well keep him because it will show they quite rightly feel the players are good enough. I'm not fully sure what you mean there, mate. I know bits of this. Like, I know you obviously want to make the change, and you're saying that the players are good enough, which I obviously maintain for the whole season. So, yeah, I don't fully get that, I must admit. BMG says, I want Uche in the summer, and if Getafe recall him from Palace, he might not be a terrible option. I expect we will only get in loans if we do any business at all. I think we might do some. I think we might spend some money in January, mate. I don't mind Uche, though. I think he's an interesting profile, and I like the fact they can play multiple positions as well. So I agree with you on that, but I think we showed in the summer that we can we've got a bit of money to spend with Harry Wilson. We've also been linked to obviously the Como attacker recently, Batterina, and that was in around the sort of 21 million mark, and that was for Rizzi Romano reporting. So I think you'd have to believe that. So I think there's something in that. PSF, a League One team would probably manage to win one game over a 38-game season. The better team doesn't always win. Yeah, I agree with that, BMG. Jonathan says, just bask in the positivity from the last 3 games instead of worrying about what's to come. Life is too short to worry with. Leeds are in a good place right now. I agree with you, Jonathan, and if I didn't do the Leeds lens, mate, I'd probably be in your boat. The issue is, mate, I'm on the channel and we talk about Leeds United every day. So part of that, obviously, is we've got to worry about what's going to happen in the future, or just not worry as much, but talk about what's going to happen in the future in a positive or negative light. That is kind of what we do here, I guess. So that makes it tricky, but I get your point. 2 main reasons for playing the 3-5-2 are, number 1, this is BMG saying this, by the way. Number 1, we get the best out of Biol, and we don't have to bench him. Number 2, Diesel and Nemecha don't have to play up top alone and get isolated. I agree with all that. I completely agree with all that. PSF says, no way Pro stays if we go down. What would be the point? He has a career to think about. I think if we don't sell him in January, mate, I think if we go down, we'll keep him. And if we stay in the Premier League, we'll sell him next summer, I think. If we were sticking with the 4-3, I wouldn't be surprised if we sold Pro. But that's more of a chance of him playing. But there's more chance of him playing a 3-5-2, especially with DCL and Nemecha's injury record. I'd be amazed if we sell him. No, I get your point on this Perot situation, and when we're playing 2 up front, mate, 100%. Perot is someone that can play up front, and when you're playing with more strikers, obviously naturally he's got more chance of playing. The only thing that I think back to that is, mate, I'm not saying just sell him and not replace him. I'm saying sell him and replace him with someone who fits the 3-5-2 better. But I get your point. For me, I would be selling Pro in January. And I would bring in someone who's like, as I said, like Calvert-Lewin, like Nemecha. And someone that actually, if we went down as well, could do a good job in the Championship. PSF says he agrees with BMG. But to sort of talk about sort of the core question, which is obviously can Daniel Farke keep us up? The thing that I've got with this, and I think this is a hard question to answer at the moment, and I think obviously we've had 2 really good results, arguably 3 decent results in terms of performance against City and how it went, probably from what we expected. But I don't think I can still answer this question about can we stay in this division, because I'm still worried about this. I've got to be honest, and I'd be really interested to see what you guys think. And this is not just a Daniel Farke thing. This would be under any manager. I think where I'm looking at this moment in time is the thing I can't get away from, and I'd be interested to see what you guys think of this. Really interested, actually. I'm not sure who the third team is. That's the thing that worries me. I thought for a while it'd be West Ham. When they played us, they were absolutely awful. But they played a very different teams the way they're playing now. Obviously, Magassa's back in for them. Fernandez is back in for them. Freddie Potts has come in for them. And he made a huge difference in the midfield. And that was their main weakness. And they don't look a bad team now. And they've only lost one of the last 6. They're not winning, but they've only lost one of the last 6. So my worry is that I'm looking at this moment in time and thinking, who is the third team that goes down if it's not us? That's the thing that worries me, because I think, like I look at West Ham, I think they've got more quality than we have. And I thought we had more fight than them, but they're showing fight as well at this moment. Fulham could be interesting, but I think Marco Silva's so good that they should be good enough. I think Forest's squad's fine, and I think they'll be absolutely fine, as you know. And I think Dyche will keep them up. Like I almost feel like if, say Sunderland were on the same amount of points as West Ham, out in a different universe, say Sunderland were on the same amount of points as West Ham, I'd look at Sunderland on 13 and us on 15 and go, we could send them down because they're not good enough. But I struggle with that with West Ham. And the results keep not proving me wrong, but worrying me. And that is the thing that's my conscious head at this moment in time, is that I think Burnley and Wolves go down, and I don't think either of them get 30 points, and I think we'll definitely finish above both of them. That's my feeling. I've thought it all season. Really, I thought Wolves at the start I wasn't sure about, but I did feel that we'd be... I thought over the season we'd probably finish above them 2 teams. My always feeling has been, who is that next team? Who is the other team? You would hope it was Sunderland going into the season, but that's sort of proved a bit of a problem at this moment in time, obviously with their situation and how well they've started. So they're a bit of a problem. So it's who that third team is. And I think when I look at this further and I think that's going to be the relegation battle. I don't think you write Sunderland off yet, but I think you've got Fulham in there. I think you've got Brentford in there still. We're in there. West Ham are in there. Forest are in there at this moment, but maybe not long haul, but they are in there at this moment. I think to stay in this division this year, and we've talked about it all the time, where that's going to take and what Daniel Farke is going to need to achieve to get it, I think it's going to be high this season. I think it's going to be really high. I'm not even sure. People are going to shout me down in the comments. I know you are. But I am not sure this season if 40 points will be enough to keep in the division. I don't know if we're going to get 40 points, but what I mean by that is I think West Ham, I think Nottingham Forest, I think Fulham, and I think Sunderland, and I think Brentford will all get 40 points this season. That is my honest feeling. So if we're going to finish above one of them teams, we're, for me, going to have to get potentially more than 40 points this year. I think it's going to be high. And I was listening to a West Ham fan talk about this as well. And they obviously went down recently. A while ago, I think maybe a decade ago, and they went down with 42 points. And I'm looking at this season thinking, I think it's going to be something like that. I think a team could go down with something like 42 this year. And it might not be that high, but I think it's going to be high this year. And that's the annoying thing, is that on previous years, like if you look last year, obviously with Luton and all them teams, Leicester and Southampton and Ipswich, they were all really poor teams, and you could have finished above them, but obviously you wouldn't have done because they all came up, and we obviously would have come up with them. But it's just who's going to be, who of them teams is going to get less than 39 or less than 40 points? That's my worry. But out of curiosity, if you are watching live, who would you think is the worst team down there? Who do you think's most likely to go down out of Fulham, West Ham, Nottingham Forest, Brentford, and Sunderland? If we say them teams, who do you guys think the worst team out of them is? Who do you think who think's going to think the lowest? I think it might be a 4 to 5 horse race between those and the ones you just mentioned on around 38 points. You think they're going to be a bit lower? Okay. Sunderland can still go down. Yeah, I think they can, mate. I think AFCON and how they cope with AFCON is going to be a huge sign. Leeds are fortunate there's 2 teams worse of the positive. We just need to finish 17th. We do, Roger. But who's the worst? So if Leeds finish 17th, who do you think will finish 18th? That's my question. 40 points has to be the minimum. Yeah, I think 40 points is the... Yeah. But do you think 40 points keeps you up, PSF? I don't know. Yeah, do you know what I mean, guys? Like, I'm so frustrated that West Ham have sort of turned it round, but they've basically just started playing a much better midfield. Like they bought, if anyone doesn't know, they bought on basically the last 5 days of the transfer window, Mateus Fernandes and Magassa in midfield. If they hadn't bought them two, they'd be down. They'd have gone down if they hadn't bought them two. Them two have come in and done a fantastic job for West Ham, and it's keeping the division. It's added the legs in the midfield that they need, and it's keeping them in the fighting in the division. Let's see some guys' comments on this. I can see Fulham hitting 40, but I honestly think Forest and West Ham won't. Interesting. I'd go Forest, says Jack. I just don't see it. I just think their squad's too good. This is a Forest team that finished 7th last year in the division. And they got, and then they spent £200 million. Is that a team that's going to go down? Maybe. I mean, maybe. If it is, it's going to be a serious high points total for me. BMG says, probably West Ham. So we're all saying different teams. This is what I'm a bit worried about, because we're all saying, Jack said Forest, BMG said West Ham, Rogers said Fulham and Sunderland. We've all saying different teams, lads. So that's what I mean, though. There's not an obvious team, is there, that's like the worst of them? That's what worries me. It depends on who we lose to. Yeah, it will do to an extent, but obviously they've all got to play each other. I think with West Ham, I don't know if people know about this, but West Ham obviously have Villa at home, and they've got Man City in the way in the next two. But after that, they've got something like Brighton at home, Forest at home, Wolves at home, and a decent away game. I can't remember exactly, something like that in the next 4. And if that will be a huge sign of where they end up. If they don't start picking up series points in them next 4, like if you see it now, look at the next 4 games after the next 2 for West Ham. That's the thing that's going to change for them. That's going to decide, I think, where we'll see the fate is. But that's going to be a tricky one. Forest have also turned it around since Dyche came in. Yeah, they have. That's what I'm worried about. Obviously, they have lost the last 2 though. Remember, Forest have Europe, which will drain them. Yeah, it will, but they might end up going out, of course. This season is a week one, so we need more points than usual. In terms of like the rest of the teams are not as good, so more people pick up points of each. I think that's what you're saying, PSF. Yeah, I think it's gonna be high this year. I agree. I agree with your endpoint for sure. We need more points than usual, definitely. It's not going to be like last year. What did they all finish on? About 30 points. The 18th team. The 18th team this year will not finish on 30 points for me. Forest are safe with the Dyche effect. Yeah, that's what I feel, Roger. I agree with you, mate. Oh, someone set fire alarm off. Cheers for that, lads. It's not like I'm doing a streamer out. I think the squad is overrated. Morgan Gibbs White is quality, but the rest... I'll have to mute my mic, I think. How do I mute my mic? Let me find it. Oh, it's gone off. Never mind. So, apologies about that if you did hear it. I think the squad is overrated. Morgan Gibbs White is quality, but the rest, I said the other day, I don't think Dyche is what he is used to. They will struggle away from home, and who do they look for goals? They've still got decent strikers though. Roger said, didn't West Ham change manager? Yeah, they did. They brought in Nuno, and of course he's doing quite well. We've already dropped points against a couple of the poorer teams, although we've also beaten a couple of them. Yeah, basically, mate, truthfully, we obviously beat Wolves away, and we've lost obviously Burnley, which was an awful one, and we've lost at Forest. We've lost at Fulham as well. It's the home games, though, innit? And I'm glad that we've got them the other way around. Like, I'm glad we've played them away, majority of them away first, and then we get to play them at home second. I think that's a positive for us. And we've got, as I said, in the last 10 games, we play a lot of these teams at home. I don't think we'll spend in January because Farke can't attract good players. Well, we will spend, mate. But we spent 100 million in the summer, so we can spend. And Farke can bring players in because players, even if they're not attracted by Daniel Farke, which I can understand, they're still going to be attracted by the chance of playing in the Premier League. But the January transfer window will have a lot of bearing on this, for sure. 100%. Like, I think West Ham are ready to go and throw kitty at it. It, of course, will be if their times work, but they did in the summer, as I said, with Magassa and Fernandes. Woody's passed it and had a purple patch and not convinced on Jesus and Calmawendo. Wingers are bang average too. Okay, yeah. Were you saying that after they beat Liverpool 3-0 though, Jack, to be fair? That's my only thing. But I hope you're right. I hope you're right. Because fundamentally, we want as many teams in. Do we think Brentford have got a chance as well? Like Brentford, are they definitely down? Because I think if we were to beat Brentford this weekend, that would be interesting. The only thing with Brentford is they're terrible away, by the way. They've picked up 3 points away from home as well, like us. The only thing that Brentford have got, though, going for them is that they are outstanding at home. They've played 7 home games this season, Brentford, and picked up 16 points. And we think we're pretty good at home. We've played 8 games, so 1 more, and picked up 12 points. So, yeah, they're good at home. They are seriously, seriously good at home. Better than we are at home. And that's going to be a really hard game. If we were to win that game, it could make it interesting. But yeah, that's my only thing, people. That's my only thing, is that when people ask me, are we going to stay in the division? Even we've maybe gone a bit off the Daniel Farke situation here as well. But the question will be, who is that third team and how many points are they going to get? Because they're all going to be getting high points. It's just a shame Sunderland are so good, isn't it? Why didn't Sheffield United get promoted? Because if Sheffield United had been promoted, we'd have been staying up this season. But they bloody managed to lose in the playoff final, which I was at, by the way. Little flex, you know. Had to do it. No, I'm joking. Anyway, thanks all for watching, as always. We're back tomorrow. Finally, I think we'll do the show at 8 p.m, not at 7 p.m. I do prefer the 8 p.m. slot, I must admit. I don't know if you guys know that, but I do. And then Friday, 8 p.m. Saturday, I don't know what my Saturday plans are. We might have another 8 p.m. stream anyway, but I'll let you know later in the week. Sunday, obviously, will be the match reaction. We might even do a closing whistle as well. Selzer's also Poppadom hands and Mikolenkovic is a truck. I get you don't like Forest, Jack. I'm getting that idea. Liverpool result was more down to the poor run too, in my opinion. I definitely do not have a Forest agenda. We're capable of being very good away, but Farke has no good tactics. Well, let's end on that, PSF, because we'll end on you not liking the manager, which is, I guess, a good a sign that we've had pretty much all season. See you later, everybody. Bye for now.